Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fully Booked, the Hidden Gems author podcast, which Craig Touch and myself, Roland Hume, chat some of the interesting figures and leading lights of this crazy industry of writing and self-publishing. And I will say I am super excited today by our guest. She is Maria Secoy, who is the founder of All Right Well and an author herself. And she lives in the woods. And I want to know whereabouts in the woods she lives, not like the specific address, but like general geographic location. But Maria, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, and where in the woods are you?
So I am deep in the Appalachian Mountains, and I'm in this really quirky location where if I want to go to the grocery store, it's a pretty solid 40-minute drive.
Wow.
On the other hand, if I want to go into the heart of Washington, D.C., it's only about 3 hours.
Wow. That's very, there we go. The Appalachians, I can hear the banjo music already. But
that is a fair assessment for where I live.
Well, Maria, I'm super excited to talk to you. And of course, we wouldn't be here without the man himself, Craig Touch, the owner and founder of Hidden Gems and an author himself. How are you doing today, Craig?
Doing great. Thanks, Roland. And thanks for joining us, Maria. Yeah, so you're the founder of All Right Well. So we want to talk about sort of what you guys do. But in general, we're talking today about like the business side of writing, which is unfortunately for a lot of authors, a big part of the process of self-publishing, where, you know, so many of us get into this just to write and then realize, oh, wow, you know, actually, even these days, if you are with a real publisher, there's a lot of stuff that still lands on your plate that is not really writing related. So, you know, this is the kind of thing that a lot of authors want to know more and more about. There's so many different ways of doing things. There's so many different strategies. So it's always great to talk to people about what they find works. So why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and All Right Well and what you guys do with authors?
Yeah, so absolutely. I fell into writing backwards. In fact, I spent most of my life determined to grow up to be a pediatrician. I even started university with a degree in biology pre-med. So I am much more of a data and analytics person than I am a word person at heart in many ways. And when I ended up halfway through university deciding to get a degree in English and became a teacher like so many. I absolutely loved it, but the piece of teaching that I really fell in love with was working with writers in a very authentic way. And I was able to partner with a really fantastic university professor, and we spent 5 years researching the most effective ways to help writers authentically engage in and level up their craft in a way that is creatively rewarding and continues to inspire and motivate rather than turning into a drudgery. So when I left teaching and kind of decided to become an author and work with other authors full time, I had been writing professionally as my side gig for many years before that, because teacher salaries in the States leave a lot to be desired. But when I stepped out into the world and I said, you know, I really want to focus on writing, and I want to focus on writing specifically with adults, because I heard so many adults, my mother included, talking about these ideas for these fantastic books that share reality through fiction in a way that really lends a different perspective to the world. And so I said, you know what? I wonder if all of that research that I did on how to support writers, I wonder if that works for adults too. And we learned very quickly, 100% it does. My mother is now the author of multiple books, as are many other authors I've had the honor of working with. But as I got deeper into things, I very quickly realized that there are a million really amazing writing coaches out there. There are some professional editors out there who are amazing and will help writers level up their craft. The big gap that I found was when it came time to treat my writing like a business and find that balance of investing in quality and ensuring that I am sharing literature that I am proud of with my readers, with all of the responsibilities that indie authors have, from marketing to publishing to budgeting and finances to the actual writing craft. And I didn't find anything good and solid and really anything that I could make my own in that realm of how do we balance all of this? How do we take this passion that we have for writing and turn it into a viable career without being so consumed by being a business owner that we give up our writing time. And so that's really where I focused my energy the last 3 or 4 years now. And I'm really proud to say that I have developed a system that has worked for many, many authors to start small, grow with intention through multiple stages, so that we really keep our business owner growth, our marketing powers, and our writing skills all leveling up together.
I think that sounds one of my philosophies ever since I got into self-publishing, because I'm lucky enough to be successful with self-publishing, is anybody has the potential to be a successful self-published author as long as they learn the craft of writing and follow the process of successful self-publishing, because it is a process. It's a business model that is replicable. And it's one of those things that's always seems to be like the missing element. And so I was so excited to talk to you, because that seems to be the element you bring to the table.
Thank you. That's exactly how I felt. Like so many creative professions, we really have to negotiate that balance between analytical business sense and our creative passions, and find that balance between, how much commercial viability do we need based on our lives? How valuable is the financial outcome here versus, can we lean wholly into the artistic side of it and be a starving artist? And I know many, many, especially retired individuals who I've had the honor to work with, who they're like, I don't care about the money. I already worked my tail off my whole life earning the money. Now I want to do it for the passion. And so one of the things that I'm most proud of is really developing a methodology and a philosophy around building an author business and an author career that respects that entire spectrum and allows you, I always think of it like a choose your own adventure book. If you remember those, where at the end of the chapter, you get to decide, do you want to do this or do you want to do that? And that tells you which page to go to. I really kind of set it up that way so that it is not about this is the one right answer. And it is much more about this is the general path. And as you travel along it, these are the decisions you have to make. And the likely, not always, nothing in life is guaranteed, but the likely consequences of those decisions. Because there is no wrong choice, but there is a wrong choice for a specific individual.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like when we do consult calls with authors, like pretty much the first question I usually ask, or even sometimes it's in the email before I even do the consult call, is what their goals are as an author, is whether or not, they're writing to make this a career, or they're writing as a passion project. They just want to have their book out there and have people read it, right? And it's like there's two different kinds of advice that I would give to those people. And sure, a lot of the stuff will overlap, but there's definitely different things that matter to the people depending on their goals.
Absolutely. And so, one of the most tangible choices that I always point out to people, one of the first questions I always ask is, how many books do you want to write in the next 3 years? And if they tell me, well, one, that's really it. I have one story. I might want to write a second one someday, but for now I've just got one to focus on. And if I say, what's your primary goal? And they're like, I just want to be a published author. Well, then it's like, okay, trying to teach you industry standards for formatting, trying to show you how to use Atticus or Vellum or whatever software, understanding the industry norms in terms of your trim size and things like that. That's not really necessary. If you're only looking to do this once, it's much more efficient for you to go ahead and pay somebody and hire that out. And so again, like both are very, very viable, reasonable options. It's a question of which one's the right fit for a specific individual.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, some people, like you said, some people have the budget, especially when you're in the nonfiction world, where a lot of times they're writing for a completely different purpose than what a fiction author is writing for, right? They want to build their business. And a lot of times they're hiring out pretty much everything, even the writing of the book. Like they'll hire the ghostwriters, and they'll hire the marketers, and they'll hire, every sort of part of it, so that when they go and do their speaking engagements, or when they want to sell their services, they can say, hey, I wrote the book on this topic, even though they didn't really.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it sounds like people that you work with, I mean, I'm sure it probably spans the whole process, but a lot of times you'll get people even before they start writing their books from that stage on.
So I generally recommend that people hit 80% of their manuscript before they come to me. And it's not that I don't love working with them on writing. It is more that I look around and I recognize that there are 100 people out there who can help them with the writing. I would rather spend my time and energy kind of filling that gap. Like you said, I really, every time I look around, I'm like, we're not having conversations about book publishing as a production process. And yet, if our goal is commercial success, that's exactly what it is. And we talk a lot about our love for our books as our babies, but we don't necessarily talk a ton about the fact that they are very low ticket consumer good, a product that we are essentially selling, that we're able to sell over and over again. And I never want to lose the creative conversations. Like that's absolutely why we're all here. That always comes first. But I think so many authors would achieve success if we had a better balance to the conversation, because the number one reason that I see why authors stop publishing is because they run out of money. And they phrase it sometimes as they run out of time, they run out of energy, they run out of patience for seeing the success. But when it boils right down to it, when you really start talking to them, they're like, I have invested so much and gotten so little back. I can't continue to do this. And that just breaks my heart, because then we have people who are these dedicated, passionate writers who aren't sharing it with anyone in a time in our world where it is so easy to share our stories. So I try to help them set things up so that is never an issue.
That's right. Wonderful, because you know what, that's always been one of the obstacles as an author that I stumbled upon. It's you write the book and you get it out there and you're successful, then you write the other book, and if you get you're always working with such tight margins. If you ever get anything wrong with it, it's like, oh crap, I just lost that month's marketing budget. And it's like, what can I do to get that back? And then you spend so much time hustling to get the money to be able to do that you can't do the writing, which is what you need to do to have a writing business.
Exactly. And so that's where, like, all right, well, we have some very strong foundations of the business. I kind of call them our brand pillars, because they are the foundation on which I build everything else. And that is that we are writers first. We should be spending 80% of our author time writing pretty much every single week. If we lose that balance, then are we really authors, or are we now just business owners who wish we had more time to write? And how is that any different from the day job where we miss having more time to write? So exactly. So that's one of those core pieces. And then the other thing is that I always call it the infinite financial runway. If you can balance income and expenditure, so if you can keep your book production cost in line with realistic revenue on that book for where you're at in your career, then as long as books can self-fund and you love to write, you can write and publish forevermore. And eventually there will come a day when you have more income than you have expense, and you're able to help your family budget rather than draining it for what often becomes a very expensive hobby.
Which people don't get, which your friends and family members don't get. They don't understand. They're like, why are you doing this if you're not making money? And it's kind of like, well, I'm a writer. It's,
Right. Yeah. And I mean, listen, like you said, not all authors are going to succeed, right? Roland said this in the past, like, you can be the best marketer in the world, but you have to have a product that can sell. But, in a world where, you're writing the stories that there's at least some market for, you should be able to keep writing those stories and budgeting things. And there's things that, that you can spend more on or spend less on. And those are sort of making decisions. Like, some people spend thousands of dollars on their cover, but you can also spend hundreds of dollars on your cover, or you can do it yourself, which usually will cost you hundreds or thousands of dollars. But yeah, there's a lot of ways to spend money in publishing, and not all of them are, the best decisions, or the right decisions for a specific author. I can see some authors in some situations spending, X amount of dollars on marketing, and that makes sense. Whereas a different author can spend 20 times that, and it makes sense for them, but it wouldn't, vice versa. It wouldn't work the other ways around, right? And people have to be realistic about that and understand what their situation is. And like you said, grow in stages, not say, oh, I wrote my first book, I'm going to spend $10,000 on an advertising campaign right now, and before I even know if anybody wants to read it. And
Exactly.
So, okay, so what is your sort of process that you take people through?
So the core methodology is twofold. Number one, I recognize that we have 4 stages of an author career. And I always point out that this is a little bit of a misnomer because there are actually an infinite number of stages, but it's because the 4th stage of maintenance is like an infinite merry-go-round through all of the stages together. But so few authors stick with it long enough to get to that point that I don't tend to go too deep down that rabbit hole. I always really focus on the 1st and 2nd stage of being an author, because I've learned that if we can recognize that the first priority we have to have as authors is learning our book production process, developing a book production process that works for us, that is predictable and repeatable, and iterating through it enough times that it no longer requires 100% of our cognitive attention, is key to then allowing us the brain space necessary to start adding in other things. So, for example, I generally recommend that most authors spend their first book defining success as, did the book get published? If the answer to that question is yes, you've succeeded. Congratulations, you're now an author. The second book is going to go worse than the first because we think we should know what we're doing, but we've only ever done it once before, so we really don't. So second books are like survival mode. That's the definition of success there. I did it again. You win. Congratulations. By the third time we do something, it really starts to become a part of who we are. And I used to mentor new teachers as well. And it was really funny because we see this statistically line up with teacher metrics as well. A third year teacher is when everything comes together and it really gels. And so for our book publishing as well, when we are doing it for that third time, we find ourselves going, oh, I do remember doing this. Oh, I remember this part was hard, but here's what I did to get through it. And it wasn't that bad. So that after we've done that a few times, it's like, okay, I know how to publish books now. I'm very comfortable with that. During that time, I really encourage authors to embed as much marketing into the writing and publishing as possible by using a strategic link at the end of their book, by optimizing Amazon's algorithm and using their publishing schedule as their primary marketing engine so that we can take advantage of having followers on Amazon and the emails that Amazon will send on our behalf. Not because I think that we should go all in on Amazon. I absolutely do not. But I think it's the easy button, the easy starting point for new authors. And then in the second stage, we go, okay, I now know how to write and I know how to publish, and I've got this kind of system going and it's predictable. I can schedule things in advance and know that I can fulfill that promise to my readers. Now it's time to start growing my newsletter list. Now it's time to start maybe looking at some paid ads, definitely doing more social media engagement and doing more there, and starting to really collect data and pay attention to who are our readers. Where do they live? Not physically, but in terms of online. Are they Facebook people? Are they Instagram people? Are they all over TikTok? And as we get to know our readers through that process and we collect that data then becomes vital to running paid marketing and adding in promo boxes and swag and all of those other fun things that we love to get to do. So at that point, we're really moving into the third stage of an author's career where we are optimizing everything for profit. And I hear a lot of really experienced and intelligent people speak about individual elements in all of those stages, but I don't often hear them being sequenced in that kind of logical way. So, during data collection, that's when I recommend that you at least consider going wide, considering adding audiobooks and translations. And it makes such a difference. I see so many new authors in particular breathe this massive sigh of relief when they realize I don't have to have a website for my very first book. I don't need 1,000 newsletter subscribers before I release my second novel. I can focus on figuring out the publishing industry and how to do that in a quality and affordable way that works for me and my lifestyle, and then grow into the other aspects of being an author.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, a lot of people do try to jumpstart things, and they, you'll go when you'll start reading, Reddit threads or websites, and seeing all the things that you need to do, which can become overwhelming, and they don't always lay out sort of when you need to do them all. You just say, oh, a successful author does all these things. And so you think, okay, well, I'm about to publish my first book. I need to do all those things. But you're right. It comes in stages. I mean, in your first book, you don't have an audience. You don't need
Exactly.
well, you should set up a mailing list as soon as you can to start collecting those names, but there's no names yet before you hit publish. And so starting all those social accounts and everything, if you're doing all that before the book is published, who's following it, really? So and then you're right, like the marketing side of it, especially these days, it's expensive. You can spend a lot of money, and if you're not doing it right, and if you don't have the key data that you need to figure out who your readers are and who you want to target, that money will get spent by Facebook or Google or Amazon, because they're just going to spend your budget, whether you're pointed at the right people or not. So you do want to make sure you get all that right and understand it.
Well, and then there are vital metrics. So one of the core things that I did very early on was I put together a spreadsheet that is a read-through rate tracker that has 3 different sections. We look at ebook purchasers, we look at KU readers, who we get paid through those KENP, Kindle Edition Normalized Page Reads, and then we have paperback purchasers. And we group those 3 and we calculate our read-through rate on there and actually convert that into dollars and cents. So when, authors who work with me, typically before they launch something like a Facebook marketing campaign, we already know to the penny how much they can afford to spend to acquire a new reader. So I know that with my Taylor Industry series, it's a 6-book series, and I know that based on my read-through rate, a KU reader will earn an average of $6. I will earn an average of like $6.18. So I know that if I'm running a Facebook ad campaign and my reader acquisition cost, the cost of me selling a copy of book 1, if that goes higher than, I like to keep a 2.0 return on my ad spend. For every dollar I spend, I want to earn $2 back, and we call that ROAS. I know that, if I know on average I'm going to earn $6, well, okay, I can spend up to $3. But if those conversions, if those book sales start costing me more than $3 each, I'm not going to see as much profit as I want. And so I need to start paying attention. And it allows us to start testing Facebook ads without having to go deep in the hole. There's always some testing, but we're able to see, how much can we really spend before we are genuinely losing money on an ad campaign.
Yeah, it's interesting. So how are you determining how many page reads somebody's doing? I mean, you can get your overall page reads, right? But you don't necessarily even know how many people borrow the book. So you just only know how many page reads. So
that's the really cool thing with the way that we convert it into dollars and cents, is that we know that every page read is going to be equal to an average of 0.4 cents. And it goes up and down seasonally. I mean, there are a million variables like that, but we know that average. And so we just look at the total number of pages read, because you're absolutely right. There are going to be some people who stop at page 50. There are going to be some people who take so long to read it that it ends up scattered all over the place. And this is the other reason why I say you can't look at your data until you're into stage 2. Because if you're trying to do this on 1 or 2 books, it doesn't mean anything, because we don't have enough data. There's not the statistical sample size is too small. One person is just one person. So by waiting till stage 2, and then by looking at it in much larger quantities, and we tend to look at it at a year at a time. So most of my authors, we look at this and we go, okay, over the last 365 days, I've had this many people purchase the ebook of book 1. And then I've had this many people purchase the ebook of book 2, and this many people purchase the ebook of book 3. But we convert that all into the financial gain from it. So how much royalties do I earn off of each of those sales? And we do the same thing for those Kindle Edition Normalized Page Reads. And by doing it that way, it negates the whole question of, is this the same person? Because we're really looking at large enough and general enough numbers to be able to get a very big picture, high level view. What follow-up questions do you have? I know I just went super nerdy on you. I'm so sorry.
No,
I know you were going to have an interview with a data nerd.
No, it's
brilliant, because things I often say to people is if you only have a couple of books, you will spend money on advertising them. You will lose money on that, but what you are paying for is information. And then that information you can then use to dial things in. And there is you're not going to be able to be a profitable author if you only have 2 books. But if you have 10 books and you have that information you paid for, then, hey, you can really do something with that.
And you don't have to pay for that information. You can get it without paying for it if you are willing to use Amazon's algorithm, if you're willing to use your publishing schedule as your primary marketing engine, if you are willing to put in the time instead of the money.
Yes.
Now, that doesn't mean you don't have to invest. It just means that you can choose to invest time instead of money, because that's one of my other big things. I see the publishing industry as it is today. I love having grown up and getting to watch the gatekeepers be ripped down. If someone has a powerful story, no one can tell them not to publish it. And I never want a financial situation to prevent someone from publishing either. However, that does not mean that I condone or think it's okay for people to publish garbage. Quality matters. The publishing industry has standards for a reason, and we need to follow them. But that also means that we need to recognize that those are standards that people need information about, that they need opportunities to learn about, and that they need someone to teach them about. And I feel like too often we skip over that in favor of, here, let me teach you how to spend a bunch of money on paid ads.
I think that's very, very valid. Sorry, Craig, I totally steamrolled you, so you go ahead.
No, I'm just trying still to wrap my head around the KU thing, because I'm just trying to figure out whether it even matters. But let's use some examples, right? Let's say your book is 300 pages and you have 3,000 page reads. Are you assuming then that 10 people bought it and read the whole thing cover to cover? Because that's an assumption that is not necessarily the case, but I'm not even sure if it matters for the calculations you're doing, because it could be that 100 people bought it and only read 30 pages each, in which case you have a problem with your book, which is always the issue, right? Is trying to figure out what those page reads mean. If Amazon gave us the number of boroughs, that would help so much in so many ways. I don't know why they don't, but yeah.
So I totally got this. Check this out. We're going to walk through a real world example here. All right. Yeah. Let's say for very simple numbers, are you okay with saying, let's say we have a 100-page book.
Okay.
Okay. And so for every 100 pages read, we earn an average of 0.4 cents. So that's what, 40 cents for every 100 pages read, right?
Right.
I wasn't informed that math was going to be involved in this podcast.
I know,
well, she's doing it, so
sorry.
it's okay.
I was going to say, I'm doing it. I even have my notebook out, and this is how much of a data nerd I am. I keep a calculator on my desk, but I love it because it's pink and purple.
Oh, wow.
Listen, math is fine as long as other people do it. That's my fault.
And that's honestly, that's why a lot of authors work with me, is because they're like, I don't want to have to do the math. And I'm like, that's cool. I'm happy to do it for you, because that, for me, I love that. That's also why I tell people, I'm like, I'll never be an epic fantasy writer, because dreaming up imaginary worlds, like, I admire people who can come up with some of that. That's just not how my brain works. My books are always grounded in reality and scientifically accurate down to the computer coding, which luckily for me, there's a group of people in the world. There are a group of readers who appreciate that. I love picking apart my timelines and seeing that, yes, it really does work out. So if we have a book that is 100 pages, we're going to earn 40 cents off of every 100 pages read. Now, you ask the question, let's say that at the end of the month, I see that I have 1,000 page reads. And again, we're just making up easy numbers for now. Mm-hmm. And then your question is, you had a couple questions here, if I understood correctly. Number one, you were asking, how do I know if that 1,000 pages came from 10 readers or came from 500 readers that only read 2 pages each?
Right.
And so my answer to that piece of the question is that I don't care, because
No, that was what I was thinking might be the answer.
right. Well, because so what I do is I do two things. Number one, I never look at one book in isolation. I'm always looking at a series here. And I really recommend authors stop writing trilogies. This breaks my heart. When we look at the statistics behind book read-through rates, converting a reader from book 1 to book 2 is the second hardest conversion you'll ever make after getting them to pick up book 1. Converting them from book 2 to book 3 is the third hardest conversion you'll ever make. You know what the easiest conversion you'll ever make is? It's from book 3 to book 4. So why in the name of Sam Hill are we not writing book 4? Usually when I show my authors the data on that, they go invent a character to write a fourth book in their trilogy, because it really is. And it's one of those very little things that the minute we look at this from a business perspective, and we really put on those business owner lenses, we look at this and we go, oh, yes, I should write a fourth book. And if there's a fifth one in there, great, let's do that too. We don't have to write them all in order. We can take a break and write a different series in between. You know, but I have so many authors, they're like, well, I think it could be like 5 books, but I might just stop after 3. And I want to be like, no, don't do that. Okay, so we have 1,000 pages read. I'm going to ignore the number of readers. And instead, I'm going to recognize that 1,000 page reads equals $4. And then if in that same month, I look at the next book in the series, and the next book in the series has 800 page reads, that's going to be $3 and change. What, like $3.30, something like that? $3 and change. First of all, that's a pretty strong read-through rate between those 2 books. And second of all, that means that regardless of how many readers are involved, I can average out and say, okay, on average, for every copy of book 1 that I sell, I am going to earn $1.30. Don't quote me on that math. I might be a little bit off there. But what we're looking at,
I'm the wrong person to ask.
What we're looking at is essentially, as we look at how that income decreases through each book, we can predict at a very high, with a very large sample size. Okay, this does not work for a single month. This does not work for a single book. I look at a minimum of a 3 to 4 book series over the course of a minimum of 6 months. And I really like to look at a year's worth of data. And that's when the sample size is large enough for these numbers to be meaningful and be very, very accurate in terms of predicting how much we can expect to earn. And what it all boils down to for the business gurus in your audience is this is essentially a different way of looking at our book series as a sales pipeline. So what we're really doing is taking a sales pipeline and that methodology and overlaying it on our series of books to predict what's based on what goes in one end, we can predict what will come out the other.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. I mean, when you look at it in a longer term, and if you're not really caring as much about whether people are reading the full book, then I could see where that makes sense for what you're trying to figure out. I'm thinking of more in terms of, you know, the value to authors, because when you said read through, initially your read through tracker, I was thinking more like predicting whether or not your books are being read to completion, which is an important thing, but it's very hard to measure.
Is it though? Let me ask you that. And this is why, and I mean, I know it's tough. No, I love conversations like this. This is absolutely the kind of conversations that I think the author community needs more of, because you absolutely have not only a very valid point, but one that I think most, and I might be wrong about that, but I know there are a lot of authors who absolutely agree with what you just said. There is value in a reader completing this book and reading on to the next, right? I don't know too many people who would disagree with that. I certainly wouldn't. That said, when I put on my business owner hat, value takes on a different meaning. Because when I am thinking from that author perspective, and I always talk about it like the difference between my head and my heart. I write my stories from my heart. I hear those characters' voices in my head. They often tell me what they're going to do. regardless of what I may have outlined or thought through in advance. And so there is that very emotional, very heartbound element to the work that we do. And in that sense, yes, it's incredibly valuable to me to know that a reader was so moved by my story that they not only finished it, but they went on to pick up more of my work. That has great value in my heart, but no matter how many times I ask, my mortgage company just will not accept that as payment. And so when I put on my business owner hat, I redefine value as the monetary exchange. That if we are going to do this as a career and be an author business, we do have a fiduciary responsibility to look at our financial balance sheet and say, okay, how is this working from that business perspective? And when I look at it that way, and it is really important to note all of those caveats, it has to be a large sample size, or it doesn't work. It doesn't matter. The math falls apart because statistics don't work that way. I can't state that firmly enough. That said, once I know that I can predict, okay, if this many people pick up book 1, this is how that's going to impact book 2 and book 3. And so this is how much revenue I'm going to take home at the end of the day based on that. Then that becomes incredibly powerful financial information so that when I start launching paid ads, I can predict day to day, was I profitable or not just based on, well, how many books did I sell today, but what is this likely to lead to in terms of sales over the next 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, because everybody reads at different rates. I have readers who tear through my Taylor Industry series in 6 days, and I have readers who have told me it's going to be 6 years before they finish the series, but they're really looking forward to it. And that's okay. Part of why I like looking at it this way is because it takes that timeline element out of it. And it adds, for me at least, and this is very different for different authors, but I have to separate my head and my heart. I have to separate Maria the artist from Maria the business owner. Because if I tried to write my characters from a business owner perspective, it would sound mechanical and no one would want to read it, and I would probably hate writing it. At the same time, if we try to run our businesses from our hearts, we will go under financially almost every time. And that is when I see authors quit because they run out of money. And so that's where I try to help them build that space and that difference to recognize, hey, we can make this business decision and kind of leave our heart out of it, while also feeling all the feelings related to the artistic heart and soul that we put into our writing.
I think that's great because, as I've gone on, I've seen that the self-publishing is a legitimate business model. And then somebody mentioned the other day, it's like it's a legitimate business model, except you're catching minnows rather than catching whales. And it's like, that's fine because we're writers. And it's like, we do this because we write. If we do this just to make money, we should really be doing something like renting washing machines to people or something.
Anything.
Yeah.
Anything. But like if you want to do this because you want to be an entrepreneur, I'm sorry, you need to go back to business school, because selling what is essentially a $3 to $5 product is not the fastest way to make money. But if we're going to be writing anyway, and I firmly believe that most of us are writers that have been writing since long before publishing entered our mind. I know I was 8 years old when I wrote on wide ruled paper with my pencil. I wrote a play based on my family's Christmas craziness. So I always looked at it and I went, I'm going to be writing anyway. That was kind of how I got into it. As a teacher, I wasn't contributing enough to my family budget. And I hated every month when my husband and I looked at the budget that my contributions were so small. And I was like, there's got to be more I can do here. And, I was writing regularly anyway, just because I am a writer. And I went, there's got to be a way that I can do this for money. And I found somebody who was like, yeah, actually, I'm looking for somebody to write some blogs for me. And I was like, okay, cool. And so, I once wrote a blog called, Does Dr. Pepper Contain Laxatives? Not my finest piece of literary work, but I got paid for it and I was able to contribute to my family income while writing. For me, being an author is the best of both worlds because I get to write what I love and I earn more than I spend. And that balance to me is magical, because I can do that forever.
Mhm.
Does Dr. Pepper contain laxatives?
It does
For my
not.
14-year-old. Okay, good. Just
Rest assured, all 23 flavors or spices or whatever it is, none of them are laxatives.
I'm not even clear why the question ever came up, but okay. So, as we're getting close to the hour here, any other tips that you think are really important that we should share with the audience about, running, sort of their self-publishing career as a business, and the important things that they really need to focus on, perhaps that a lot of people are not focusing on?
So it's more, I think, remembering the sequence of priorities. We have to be writers first. We have to be publishers second. We need to be marketers and business owners third. And then we can grow and scale. But if you don't have a really strong writing foundation to ensure the quality of your stories, if you don't have the publishing foundation ensuring that you understand industry standards, reader expectations, how to align your books with your genre, it's going to be a struggle, no matter what business and marketing principles you may apply. So I always encourage authors to start small enough to leave plenty of room for error. I always compare us to toddlers. How many of us have seen a young child take their first steps?
Oh.
The end result is it the exact same every single time, 100%. How does this end every time?
On their ass or face sometimes.
Yeah, they fall down, right?
Yeah.
So we have an activity here that we know has a 100% failure rate. And yet when we watch that child take their first steps, how many of us yell at them and berate them for failing? Never, ever. We wouldn't dream of it. We are on the sidelines cheering for them and popping streamers and being all excited. And I feel that same way every time I see a new author publish their first book. It's not going to be good. That's okay. Embrace that. Celebrate that it was your first time through it, because it's the only way to get to your second book.
That's very, very good advice. And I wrote 11 books. I wrote and published 11 full-length books before I got a bestseller. So,
and here's the really cool thing. You are actually ahead of the curve. For most authors. Oh yeah. For most authors, it is typically, we're in the upper 30s now for our average number of books before an author becomes like a bestseller, really well known, or not really well known, but earning a livable income kind of thing.
Isn't it lucky we have this pathological thing where we have to keep writing books, otherwise we'll just explode?
Are you talking about like an Amazon bestseller, or like USA Today or New York Times bestseller? Those are much harder.
So you're right. I should be very clear there. So typically we see, before an author is earning a livable wage, meaning $68,000 to $80,000 a year in profit, they are in the upper 30s in books. So if you remember, I think it was 2016, Michael Anderle did the math to figure out that he could retire in Cancun on $50,000 a year if he just wrote 20 books. That math no longer maths. We now have, the industry has shifted enough in a whole myriad of ways that it's now, statistically, you need more than 30. Now, there are absolutely authors out there with 15 books making six figures, because there's always an exception to a rule. But when we look at the big picture numbers of it, authors need to be prepared to be doing this for a while before it becomes significant income.
Mm-hmm. And if they're only writing one book a year, that's going to take a while.
That's why I recommend 4 books per year. Plus, then we can use our publishing schedule as our primary marketing engine by harnessing out.
That's something that I meant to touch on when we were running out of time. But what is your 4-book?
Yeah, so the really abbreviated version, and I will say the Truly Successful Author, which is my teal colored book, nonfiction book that's available on the All Right Well website, it goes through the entire 4 books per year method. I wrote it all out in book form for anybody and everybody who wants it. So you can pick that up on my website, or it's available on Amazon, either one. But essentially what it boils down to is recognizing that Amazon will email people for us. They will promote our pre-order during the 30 days leading up to our release date. And they will promote our book as a new release for 60 to 90 days after our release. So if we have a 30-day pre-order window and 60 days of new release privilege, if you will, in terms of marketing there, that's 90 days. Well, if I'm publishing 4 books a year, I have a new book coming out about every 90 days, which means at any given moment in time, Amazon has one title that they are promoting for me, keeping my name and my books in front of readers. And because of the way Amazon tracks everything that everybody does on that website, if a reader looks at one of my books, Amazon will start showing them my other ones as well. So this will not get you to 6 figures. You cannot 4 books per year your way to 6 figures. But oh boy, is it a powerful way to start out as you buy yourself time to develop your writing skills, to find your place in the market, and to really develop strong publishing skills so that you know the quality is there before we start investing heavily in more traditional marketing strategies.
I think that's amazing. Now, unfortunately, we are approaching the top of the hour, so we're going to have to wrap things up. We could listen to you. You have such a clarity of vision about this, which is amazing. So, Craig, before we ask Maria to tell us where everyone can find out more about All Right Well and everything like that, do you have any final questions for her?
So many, but we're out of time.
We might have to, Maria. We might have to get you back if you'd be amenable to that.
Yeah,
I would love that. I firmly believe that the entire publishing industry needs to be having more of these conversations, because there may be ideas out there better than mine. I want to hear them. I'm here for it. So yeah, I love these conversations. I think we're all better authors and better business owners for it.
For sure. And I think, it's important when people share that information. There's a lot of authors out there that, they figure out the winning strategy and they keep it to themselves. And, listen, it's fine, but, there is room in the world for more than one successful author. So it's a lot of times, I think a lot of authors think of it almost like a competition, when it's not really. I mean, most people are reading far more than one book, far more than one author. So yeah, you don't have to keep it all to yourself. So thanks for coming on for sure. And why don't you tell us a little bit quickly about where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're still in the writing phase and you're trying to understand how to balance writing, revision, and finishing a book in a timely manner, I highly recommend The Truly Successful Writer. It's my orange book, and it walks you through how to complete your draft in 8 weeks while developing writing craft skills along the way. So it very strategically builds writing craft skills into your draft development process. Once you've got that draft finished, The Truly Successful Author is all about the 4 books per year method and how we can look at our book publishing process and use it as our primary marketing engine, buying ourselves time to get really comfortable with the entire process before we move on to the next stage of our career.
That is fantastic. So, well, we will pop a link down to your website down in the description down below. So if anybody is listening to this and has been excited and inspired by everything that Maria has to say, which I have to admit, I have absolutely been. Maria, you are very, very good at this. I bet you're a really good teacher.
Thank you. I like to think I was. You never really know. They're middle schoolers. Sometimes they're more like cacti than humans, but in the best, most lovable way.
Well, scroll down below and click on that link and you can find out everything that Maria and All Right Well has to offer. And while you're down there, you will scroll past that big empty comment box. So why don't you leave Maria a comment and let her know how much you've appreciated everything she's shared with us today. Why don't you tell Craig and I that you want her back for more, because we would love to have her back to quiz her on more things. And there's also that subscribe button if you haven't already, that like button, and there's a bell icon that you can click on to get notified every time there is a new episode of Fully Booked, and of course there will be a brand new episode of Fully Booked coming out next week. So until then, thank you very much, Maria, and we will see you next week. Cheerio.